My name's Dave DeBow, founder of MoneyPartnerFormula.com, and this show is built for everyday real estate investors who are actively doing deals and looking to scale using other people's money. So if you're an active real estate investor and you want to get featured on this show to talk about your own real estate and capital raising experiences, then just go to daveinterviewsyou.com. Now let's get rolling with this episode, and remember to subscribe for daily interview content. Hey everyone, welcome back. Let me ask you a question. You've probably heard of real estate notes. You might have even heard of note investing. We've interviewed a number of people doing that over the years. Today's special guest, Marco Bario, is zooming in from beautiful Frederick, Maryland, just outside of Baltimore, and he does something very, very different. He actually buys notes from mom and pop note owners, people that typically have sold their own personal residence or a property, and they've done that through owner financing. So they are carrying the mortgage. They are being the bank themselves. And instead of going to the banks and financial companies to kind of find these kind of notes en masse, Marco has figured out a way to go directly to the note owners and buy it from the mom and pop. So Marco, welcome to the show. Hopefully I did you justice with that introduction.
You did great. I'm going to steal that because you explain it far more succinctly than I ever do.
Well, Marco, thanks for being on the show. So kind of unwrap this for me a little bit. Like, let's just back up for a second. And for folks who've forgotten what note investing is or what the big benefits are, can you just kind of touch on that for a second?
Sure. If I'm selling my house to you, you can go to a third party for a loan. You can go to a bank, financial institution, or a private money lender. And in those situations, there are three people involved in the transaction: me as the seller, you as the buyer, and the money person or institution. But in many cases, there are only two parties involved in the transaction. Those are seller finance transactions. Mm-hmm. So you and I might work out terms between us where I might be looking for a certain amount of the purchase price as a down payment. Doesn't have to be a down payment. Seller financing can be flexible from zero down payment to large down payments, and frankly from 0% interest to lots of interest.
Or trading a old pickup truck instead of a down payment or something like that. There's lots of
Dave, I don't know if we're going to go down this road today, but I'm actually trading a note for note secured by land for a note secured by a car. I'm in the process of that transaction right now. So yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So basically it's the owner has the property probably free and clear. They don't have a mortgage on it. They don't owe anything on the property, and they're selling it to somebody, and the owner's just basically acting as the bank, may not be charging interest, may or may not be charging a down payment, but they've created a mortgage on their own property. Would that be fair to say?
It's accurate. I would say about 20 or 30% of the notes I buy, though, there's what we call an underlying loan. So I'm buying what's called a wrap.
Okay.
And all that means is that somebody sold a property and said, you're going to pay me whatever it is, $1,000 a month, but I have this other loan still secured by the house in first position. I owe them whatever that is, $500 a month, and you're going to pay me, I'm going to pay them. That's called a wrap. I buy those, but I pay off the underlying so that what I'm left with is a first position note.
Nice. Yeah. So for example, if the property owner got a smoking good deal, got their financing back when it was 1 or 2%, they don't necessarily want to give that up. So they can sell the property with that wrap mortgage and charge a much higher interest rate and be making money that way.
Sure. Yep. That's one way it works.
Okay, cool. Excellent. So what's the big benefit for you as the note buyer?
There aren't a lot of people who do what I do. It's very niche. And I know you talk to a lot of people in a lot of areas of real estate. And the really neat thing about investing in real estate is there's these niches. Mm-hmm. And note investing is certainly a niche within real estate investing. And buying seller carrybacks from mom and pop sellers is a niche within that.
Yeah.
There's plenty to go around. The statistics are that I can tell you in 2022, there were about $22.5 billion in seller financed originations. But as interest rates went up, the number went up. So in 2023, that number went up to $28 billion.
Wow.
In seller financed originations. So it's still small compared to the size of the mortgage market. However, there aren't a lot of people who do what I do. There are several of us, but not a lot of people. So there's plenty of inventory.
trying to get, how do you make money with this, Marco? Explain how
Well,
the
first we need
profit occurs.
inventory, sure. Um, so in real estate, there are a lot of people who say we buy houses.
Yeah.
Right? We buy houses. Well, we buy notes. My business is more or less the same thing. Somebody has not a house that they don't want or need anymore. They have a note that they don't want or need anymore. So somebody sold a property and they carried back this note, and now they're collecting payments. And let's say there's still a $100,000 balance remaining, and there's an interest rate of 6%. Well, these types of notes trade at interest rates higher than 6%. Usually it's maybe 9%, maybe 12%, maybe 14%, depending on the parameters. So I'll make an offer. I'll say, well, I can't pay the $100,000 that you're still owed. However, you don't have to wait for the next 75 payments to come in. You'll receive a lump sum from me now. Maybe it's $70,000 or whatever the numbers work out. And you'll get the money now, and I'll be the one who collects the rest of the payments.
All right. So basically, just to make sure I'm getting my head around this, Marco, you're buying the note, the mortgage, whatever we want to call it, at a discount, therefore bumping up your return on investment because that the person that has the obligation, the buyer, the end buyer of the property, is going to keep paying that monthly payment, but you're going to adjust how much you paid the note owner to really get that interest rate to go up from this example from 6%, let's say up to 12%, which is what you want to be getting as a return on your 70 grand that you've used to purchase that note. Did I get the gist of
You
it there?
you hit the nail on the head, absolutely.
Okay, perfect. So that makes sense. So it's really creating that spread and it's getting a much better return on your money backed by a solid tangible asset, which is the real property, because you're now the bank. You've got the first lien mortgage or note on that property.
100%. That's
Got it.
how it
Okay, cool.
works. That's how it
All
works.
right, very good. Now let's talk about the benefits and why you go after the mom and pops instead of what I've heard almost everybody else doing, which is going after institutional notes. You're going after individual notes. So how did you come up with that idea and why?
It's been around for a long time, just like seller financing's been around a long time. So I'll lead with that. But and primarily the note business was people going after these mom and pop seller carrybacks.
Back in the day,
But
okay.
then 2008 happened, and there
Yeah.
was this huge inventory of defaulted paper that happened to be institutional paper that hit the marketplace. And while I didn't get involved in 2008, I got involved around 2015. There was still a fair amount of inventory floating around. All this hadn't been cleared out yet.
Mhm.
And that's where I started. I started buying institutional notes. So non-performing notes with the goal being it's kind of like a house flip. The goal is to fix it up and make it worth something and sell it. And the fixing up a note like that generally means you modify it and get it to perform again, then you can sell it. It's worth more money. Or sometimes there's a foreclosure and there's a property that comes back to an investor or sells at auction.
Got it.
I did that for a little bit and I learned a lot doing it. But I found that I was mostly dealing with note servicers and attorneys, and what I really wanted to do was just deal with regular people.
Yeah, you're dealing with the
That part,
sharks, right? So I mean,
it's fine, and some really
yeah,
good and competent people in that world. But and then from afar, I would see these homeowners who they screwed up. They took on
right.
more than they could, or maybe there's something happened in their life and they got into a desperate situation. I didn't really enjoy being the person who turned the screws, who pushed them further
Mm.
into the corner until they had to break eventually and do one thing or
Yeah,
the other. That, yes, can it help them? Of course, but it's an uncomfortable situation.
yeah.
So
You're the bad guy sometimes.
yeah, so within
Mm.
this community of note investing are people who still were buying these seller carrybacks, just like they'd always been for 30 years prior.
Mm.
And as I dug deeper into that, I thought it was more of a fit for me. First of all, I can buy them all over the country, which I was already doing with the institutional notes. But it was a challenge to me too. I'd never marketed to this audience before, and I figured if I can get good at it and get consistent leads, which I do now, and make connections with people, I can do something I really enjoy doing and make money doing it. I know it's part of the pitch a lot in investing, but it's really what I
Yeah.
get to do. I meet really nice people, regular people all over the country who it's not a hard negotiation. They say, I have this note and somebody passed away or our life changed or whatever it is. It's usually they just kind of want to move on from the situation they're in, or there's something they'd rather have.
Yeah.
And it's a simple thing. What would you give me for it? And I quote a fair price. I mean, I could be aggressive and I want a 20% yield, but that's not going to get the deal done. And that's,
Yeah.
I don't think, puts the good karma out there. So I make a fair offer and I close enough of them that it keeps me busy and keeps me going.
Fascinating. And would you say it's more of a win-win in that situation, and there's still like a bit more meat left on the bone for you as an investor? Would that be fair to say, or?
It's always a win-win.
Yeah.
Some I just can't buy. I don't buy the
Yeah.
ones that are low credit or the property is. At the end of the day, a note is secured by property, which makes them
Mhm.
valuable. And if it's property I don't want because it's in the middle of nowhere, it's in terrible condition. There's always the risk that I would end up with the property. I don't want the property.
Got
And
it.
if it's a
Yeah.
property I really don't want and I could be stuck with and nobody else is going to want, in a town of 135, if member number 135 defaults on the loan, that means there's only 134 other potential buyers. I don't want that
Yeah. Yeah.
house. That's just one example.
So, okay, I'm getting this. Tell me a little bit about how you find these individual note owners, because in the information you sent me ahead of time, you said most of these people are definitely not professional investors. This is the one and only note they're probably ever creating or holding in their entire lives. How do you beat the bushes and find these kind of people and start the conversation?
Again, I go to how wholesalers and flippers market for houses. They go out there with some sort of marketing that's essentially we buy houses.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to clean it out. We'll pay cash. That's the same approach I take, and finding them is kind of similar. There are a list of them. If you can imagine, just like you can buy a list of absentee landlords or maybe people who have tax problems on the property tax side or facing foreclosure, you can find lists of people who have seller carrybacks because they all get recorded. There's a lien on the house, so it gets recorded in the
Okay.
county records. And I don't do this, but the people who sell these lists take the time to sift through and get rid of the ones that say Bank of America or some hedge fund or some insurance fund, whoever owns those big institutional loans. And what's left is the one that's payable to Sally and Bob Smith or, Jane, Jones
Mm-hmm.
of Coeur d'Alene, Idaho.
Right.
Um, and it has basic information. It has their mailing address. It has the amount
Okay.
of the
Very good.
initial lien. Doesn't have the loan terms because that would be on the promissory note. But that's a source of leads. So that's one way. I graduated, I'll say, and I used to do that. I found that the leads were a higher percentage of tire kickers. I found I got phone calls from people who got a nice postcard in the mail from me, and they weren't doing anything on a Tuesday afternoon. And I wonder
Yeah.
what it would be worth. I never thought of selling it. I wonder what this guy would pay me
So
for it.
no, so you got the right doing it that way. Yes, they have a note, but no, there's no real motivation there
That's the
necessarily.
problem.
Got it.
So I switched to online advertising, which is
Hmm.
expensive and there's a learning curve. So I pay for clicks on Google searches and Microsoft searches and things like that.
Okay.
And at least somebody was motivated enough to sit down at the computer or on their phone and say, how, sell my mortgage note.
Hmm.
And then we have something to talk about. So that's that, and referrals are my primary lead sources today.
That makes a lot of sense. I was going to ask a question because I'm just thinking I'm up here in Canada, but a lot of our viewers and listeners are American, chunk of them are Canadian. But I would say the average person in Canada, if you said note, would have no idea of what the heck you're talking about. If you said mortgage, yeah, they could get their head around that. Is the language, is the term so common in the States that pretty much everybody who's got their own mortgage note knows what a note is? Or do you have to
No,
kind of
not
spell it out?
No, there's so many
Okay.
names for them too. That's one of the challenges in marketing
Yeah.
online because I don't know what search term they're going to use. They're
Yeah.
private mortgages, they're private real estate loans, they're seller carrybacks. They're we have something that's slightly different from a legal standpoint, but the same idea called contract for deed, or it could be a land
Yeah.
contract or a real estate contract or an installment contract. I mean,
So you got to
I could
rank
list
on all
30.
those terms, right? That was some part of the
Yes.
learning curve, I would imagine.
Yes,
expensive
yes,
learning
exactly.
curve.
And by the way, anybody who types mortgage, Google, what I do is so small. There aren't a lot of algorithms looking for what I do. They assume
Yeah.
they send them the ads from Quicken Loans. Well, their marketing budget is a lot higher than mine, so I have to make sure that I'm not showing up on their searches. So
Yeah.
that's where it gets a little tricky to stretch
You
out
got
my
to show,
marketing
you got to figure
dollars.
out those long tail search terms and all that kind of internet mumbo jungle lingo there. So fascinating, Marco. So what kind of volume of notes do you do? Do you keep them all? Do you sell some? What does the business look like kind of day to day, if you don't mind sharing?
My Sure, of course. My business is this. I'll do 30 or 40 deals a year. I'm a small
Nice.
shop.
Yeah, yeah.
And the nice thing is I don't ever go to these properties. I don't care when I hold the note. I don't care about tenants and toilets and turnovers, all that
Mhm.
stuff. I just care about getting it set up and making sure the payments continue to come in. Um, the the business is two things. I keep some and I wholesale some initially. So the deals come in. I can't buy them all. I don't have unlimited capital. I do use some private money, and not all of them are a fit for me. So I have a list of buyers who like to buy these, and I'll get
Mm.
them under contract and assign the contract, just like wholesaling houses. Some of those are banks, some of those are private investors, and and stuff in between. And some like to buy notes secured by one type of property versus another type of property. One can't touch it if it has anything to do with cannabis. Other people, that's not a problem, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a bit of a matchmaking business when it comes to that. And the buyers are national. Or I keep it. And for me, that looks like funding the purchase, putting it in my account, tidying it up a little bit. The seller finance notes can be a little rough around the edges. It's not a
Yeah.
professional world. And then once I'm comfortable, it's investment worthy, if you will, then I offer it to investors and I'll sell either the back end of the note or the front end of the note rather and keep the back end. That's called selling a partial. So if there are 100 payments remaining, I might sell the next 60 to an investor and then keep the back end for myself. And there's a the financial calculator works there in the sense that if I buy a note at a 12% yield and private investor comes in at 8%, I can recoup most or all of my investment because I'm selling it at a different yield.
Yeah.
There's a yield spread there. And they're passive investors. I'm marketing and I'm closing these deals and negotiating them. So I am buying at a higher rate, but as I mentioned, I tidy it up into a nice package and it's more investment worthy. The other way to recapitalize is either sell the whole thing, kind of like doing a flip, or I can actually borrow against them, and that's called a
Hmm.
hypothecation. So I can put the loan up as collateral for another loan.
Interesting. Wow. So if somebody's kind of thinking about this and going, does this make sense or not? A couple of questions come to mind. They're probably going to wonder, okay, to really make a dent, how much capital would I really need for this to make sense? Like, how much would I need to have in the piggy bank to go out and buy some of these things, tidy them up, and get a decent, make a full time living at this?
First, there's a marketing budget. I don't lie about this, and I've given a few talks on it. Um, I don't recommend starting this unless you have $500 a month to start with. I spend
For
more than that
marketing. You're
now.
just talking about the
Yeah, for
marketing side
marketing,
of things. Yeah.
just to make the phone ring. There are some free methods. You can get out to investor groups and network and let investors who might have notes know that you're looking to buy notes. You can do something called reverse ad marketing, which is you go on Facebook Marketplace and you find people have houses for sale and it happens to say owner will carry.
Hmm.
And you call the person and you say, that's a lovely house you're offering, but I'm actually really interested in this part that says owner will carry because I like to buy these types of notes. And I wonder if you've done this before and maybe you have some notes that you'd like to recapitalize and sell. Or when you create this note, I just want to let you know I'd be interested in staying in touch because maybe I'm
Smart.
a buyer for it.
Very
That's
smart.
free except for time, so you
Yeah, yeah,
can
yeah.
start with about nothing. Um, then it's technically $5,000, but I think realistically $30,000 or $40,000 to buy your first note.
Yeah.
That's when it starts to make sense. There's
Yeah. So
nothing wrong with getting your feet wet. There's nothing wrong with working someone like me, it doesn't have to be me, who will sell you a small partial so that you can understand the process and learn that way and be
That'd be
partnered
smart.
essentially with somebody who has your back if things go sideways.
Who's
But
already
to get out,
tidied up the note and done the
yeah,
due
yeah,
diligence on it and bought it.
yeah.
So
But to
yeah,
get out
yeah.
there in the wild and really be able to take down a note that's worth taking down, it's probably $30,000 or $40,000.
Right. And then again, you got to realize, okay, if you want to replace your JOB income from that, whatever you're making at your job, what would you say is the average kind of minimum interest rate you're looking to get on these notes for it to make sense for you?
The premium notes, which really are few and far between, are trading at these days 9%. It varies with interest rates and marketplaces. There's a marketplace for secondary notes, just like any other marketplace. And then ones that are riskier, have more hair on them, the property type is such that it makes it riskier, et cetera, might trade at 14, 15%. Are there
What would
better
you say
deals
your
out there?
average? What would you say your average is, give or take?
Low double digits, 10 to
Yeah, so
12.
11, 12.
Yeah.
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 Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, you kind of got to do the math. Hey, if I'm getting on average 10% return on my money, how much money do I have to have out in order to create 5 grand a month, 10 grand a month, whatever it is that you're looking to accomplish? You're going
That's
to
how you,
have that.
yeah, Dave, it's how you start. But
Yeah.
you heard me say this in the beginning. You ever heard anybody talk about the deal after the deal? The
Yeah.
deal after the deal is I get the thing. It's like a house flipper doesn't buy a house to keep it. A housekeeper buys a house so that they can make more money on the back end on the exit. And
Mm-hmm.
for me, the exit is selling these partials and doing hypothecations to keep the money coming back in so I can grow the size of the
The
portfolio and
overall
therefore,
portfolio. Yeah.
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 So that's where I am in my career right now. There's people further along than me. We call them enders, and they don't have to worry about that anymore.
Yeah.
But I'm still
Yeah.
building it.
Fascinating stuff, Marco. If people want to connect with you and find out more, where should they go?
I've got a website which is porchswingfunding.com, porchswingfunding.com. That's my company. And if you go to the resources tab on top and look for newsletter and sign up, I don't sell anything. I teach through that and share some resources every week. And it's a good way to stay in touch with me also.
Awesome, Marco. Fascinating stuff. Thanks for sharing what it's all about.
It's been a pleasure.
All right, everybody, take care, and we will see you on the next episode. Hey there, I really hope you enjoyed that episode. And as always, if you want to listen to more daily interview content, make sure you subscribe. And if you're an active real estate investor and you're doing deals and you'd like to get featured on this show, then just head over to daveinterviewyou.com. Now, at moneypartnerformula.com, we help real estate investors to create a process for predictably getting capital so they can do more deals without relying on hard money lenders or the banks. We do this by building them a private capital marketing system. Now, if you want help turning yourself into a big money capital attraction machine, then book a call with our team to see how we can help. Just visit moneypartnerformula.com to find out more. All right, take care, and we'll see you on the next interview.